Hello, everyone, and welcome to NFT Guild Roundtable number 9. It is the beginning of October, and we have some big community events coming next week, and excited for all the connections that will be made throughout the community. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what comes out of all of that in the months to come. Today we are continuing Today we are going to be continue the NFT verification standard discussion. We have a need to improve the ownership of a token policy, and as deliberated previously, the owner pubkey hash is visible in regular token scripts. So we talked about using it to make this proof, but after some thought and exploration, however, we see that this is not available in minting policy scripts. We are therefore back to the start. And that is the pitch off in today's conversation. How can we prove policy ownership for both types of policies? Let's get after it. Got a thumbs up from Sent.
Yeah, very nice. Good. Just so we can, I can start off by sharing so that we actually remember what we talked about. Can you see this screen? No.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Great. So this is what Philip presented for us in the last roundtable, and for the ones that were present can remember that we talked about adding a identity token to the blockchain in order to get some proof for ownership of some NFT. And this identity token, we called it 789 just for an example. And it actually is a simple policy ID as we have in the 721 standard. But instead of the NFT related data, we have more of a NFT collection or identity of the artist or the owner of the NFTs or the policy. And what we proposed was to add the public key, which is the public key that is in the policy script, and also some optional fields that can be selected by the creator itself. And the magic is that we hash this data and also post the hash and signature as part of this, so that we can prove the ownership of the policy. What we also discussed was the need to prove that this public key is in fact the owner. And what we talked about then was to make use of the policy script. And this is an example that has been created using the for use with a normal node, Cardano node. And then there we see that we have the key hash available, which is a hash of the public key. So if we can prove that this hash is the same as this public key, then we have a match. With some more thought, however, we saw that in Plutus scripts, this public key hash is not available in the script file anymore. This is not a minting policy, it's just an example. But there we see that it's only a CBOR hexadecimal of the contract. So that is where we ended because we don't see a way of doing the proof for contracts of the Plutus kind. And of course it makes sense that it's not part of this. You can have open policy scripts that everybody can use to mint tokens. So it's not a surprise actually, but it was something that we didn't think about. So the question still remains, is that how can we prove this for also the Plutus minting policies? So yes, it says brainstorming, and it's I don't have any suggestions, because every suggestion that I think about, I also find not usable. So I really hope that we can have some good suggestions on this.
Normally, I would argue the more people, the better for brainstorming. So that puts us in a tight spot. Obviously, I haven't done any, like I can straight out say I haven't done any minting. I know policies. I haven't done any contracts recently as well. So I'm not deep in the material. One of the things that maybe we could recap is kind of what are the constraints we're working in with regards to. Are we planning to allow only certain versions of Plutus? So are we okay with saying, because I don't know the details, what are the things that become available to us with inline datums and all that jazz with Basil that we may not have had before? Is there anything that we can start leveraging there that was not on the table before because it just wasn't existing as an option? Kind of instead of saying, oh, we need to be backwards compatible to Plutus V1 and all those things. Is there anything that we can leverage there?
Well, I think that we are pretty open on what to leverage as long as we don't need to do any transactions towards the minting policy in order to do the verification. The data that we should make use of should be available on the chain and possible to verify in the state that it is in. So if that is possible using other mechanisms like datums and stuff like that, it's it's not a problem as long as we can do the verification without doing transactions.
Gotcha. I think since I wasn't in the previous meetings, I don't have a full idea of what is the problem you're trying to solve. But the way I start to get a handle on it, you want to verify ownership of the policy itself without having to interact with the policy. Is that like the general idea?
Yeah, that is the idea. And also the result of this is to be able to verify the NFTs themselves so that they are actually part of a verified policy, so that we get rid of all of the fake NFTs.
Would that mean that the NFT itself includes information that lets you trace this back, or was the plan to trace back the ancestry of an NFT based on the transaction history and like, okay, where did it come from? Where was it minted? And then from that address, you can determine like the original owner. What was the vision there?
The link, as far as we have thought now, is simply the policy ID, which is which is part of the 721. So, and we also make use of that in our new identity token. So it's in that regard, we have a link.
Gotcha. So the idea would be to look up the token in your identity example, to look up the token, the 789 token. Would that be expected to be minted on the same policy, similar to how royalty tokens work, or would that be expected to be potentially living elsewhere?
Yes, for the when it's possible, we want it to be minted using the policy. But of course, for backwards compatibility, we can have a transaction simply done to the chain with the metadata, so that we get it out in that way. But yeah, of course, with the data that we can then do the verification using. So yeah, it's a tough nut to to solve. We can, of course, also discuss the requirement itself for doing the verification, because as we see this, as long as we have the hash and signature, we have proof for this data to be correct. And in that regard, as long as you can have a look at all of these fields and verify this to be okay, then and if you then trust this user, then it might be that you also trust the data. But this is possible to achieve using the legacy, if you call it the legacy minting policies created before we had smart contracts. So it would be good to have this also for Plutus contracts.
What percentage of future NFT and FT policies do you think will move over to Plutus minting, to smart contract based minting? Because that should have been a capability that opened up last year, and so far most are still not done that way.
Yeah, for the simple mintings, you don't need a contract. But if you want to do some kind of calculation before you mint, then you would need a script. So or a contract. So I would guess that more and more will move over. But it depends on the use case, obviously.
And you also mentioned in the presentation earlier something about public policies where minting can be done basically by anyone interacting with the contract. So in that case, what exactly would we be verifying? And in the sense that would there be a need for an identity verification token if it's not necessarily tied to a single, let's say, entity, a single creator of that policy?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense to also do the verification of ownership for the open ones. if we think about use cases like you are actually doing a payment to the policy before it lets you get the token back, then you would like to know that it's the correct one so that you don't get garbage in return. So that is one thing.
So you would still be verifying the original creator, initiator of.
Yeah, I think it's nice to know that if the NFT Guild has an open policy and we mint a token, I think it's good to be able to prove that it's the real deal. It's our real open policy, so that people know that they get the correct tokens back.
And how is that different from current open policies, like the ones I don't know, let's say a fungible token faucet, or even just a classic vending machine style where basically you're minting the tokens as, or are the additional complications? You're minting the tokens as you send the transaction, even in a multi-sig transaction. So
yeah, it's I don't think it's any difference. The only thing that we are trying now to provide proof for ownership in our case. If there is a open policy or a faucet, this faucet can be surfaced on a web page or something like that, which in turn will let you see the ownership because of other external things like certificates and web related stuff. But we were hoping to do this using blockchain functionality.
yeah, I get that. I mean, of course, that's why we're having this discussion in the first place, to have all this data on chain and not be dependent on manual verification of a marketplace or another, or some off-chain database, even if it would be shared, which initially it was, but I don't think JPEG Store, for instance, is creating an open source database for verification any longer. Because I mean, back when it started, CNFT.io had an open repo, and I think the other marketplaces that were around at the time kind of used that token. I think used it, but that's beside the discussion here. But would there be a completely novel approach? I mean, like Neil suggested, something that entirely new, so different from this approach, that would work for the smart contract minting, that would also be adaptable to non-smart contract policy script.
Is there anything we could do with the addresses that are involved in whatever contract, or if you're doing like a vending machine, that will also usually be associated with an address, unless you're doing some kind of like dynamic address generation. So is there a way to incorporate the address somehow in the verification process?
Sure. The public key that we have identified in this case is a Cardano address. So if we can also make use of something similar for smart contracts, it would be a good solution, I think.
So the problem now is just in simple terms, that we're in the case of smart contract minting, we're missing that hash that you otherwise would get with non-smart contract minting. Is that correct?
We are missing this key hash, which identifies the owner. And this, of course, has to do with how the minting is done. It's not in the same way for Plutus contracts. They don't have a owner in the same sense. The only thing that you need to have access to the script file. If that is an open policy, it will be published to everybody or surfaced on a web page. So everybody who is trying to do it will be able to do it for open ones. Yeah, but it's difficult when we don't have this true proof. But it's if we can have some kind of I was actually thinking about some ways of doing it. If we can prove that you have done a mint, then yeah, I don't know. And it's as I said, I don't yeah, I'm looking for solutions because I always stop myself. But it's interesting the point that you bring, Nils, to have a look at a way to identify the addresses in some way, because that will bring us a bit further and back to the things that we have for the regular ones from before.
I mean, in the end, it may have to be that there are two different ways to do it, depending on if you have a smart contract script. Not necessarily different ways that the identity token looks, but different ways that the identity tokens, the key that you're using essentially is used, right? It could be that currently the idea was for non-Plutus policies like this one. So we have the key hash here, 5cc. Which again, how would this work if there are if there's a policy that lets different entities create? Like even there, you can allow two different signatures, right? You can nest the type, and you can say like, okay, this is a closed policy after 1st of January 2023, and there's two signatures that are allowed to mint under this policy. How would that work? In this case, or would we only allow, oh, well, you can only have one key hash in your policy to be able to use that token. How does it apply for arbitrary, complicated, non-Plutus minting policies is my ask, I guess.
Yeah, you're mentioning then multisig, is that? Yeah, that you have more than one key hash?
I mean, multi-sig, a lot of people think multi-sig as in, oh, I have to have multiple signatures. I'm talking about, you can build a script that has two different signators that are both allowed individually without, you don't need both signatures, but you can do like the or connection, right? Where you say either A or B can sign for this policy to be minting. So it's not necessarily A, both actors need to be present at the same time.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we had that as part of the discussion. It's not determined, but we have actually said that it's a list of public keys here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we thought it should be some kind of list of public keys that can be made, that can be the owners. One thing that we was unsure of was how many signatures this would produce, if they all would do the signing of this metadata. But it so yeah, we haven't got a solution for it, but we have thought about it, you can say.
Yeah, I'll throw one last idea out before I have to go. And like, again, pardon me if I'm repeating things that haven't already said or that don't make sense at all, because I'm just jumping into this topic like feet first, no idea. But I'm wondering if there's a way where we could leverage, instead of using the signatures themselves, like as in, if you go back to the policy, the open policy, or not the open policy, but if instead of using individual hashes from here, we essentially create another hash of this. So you could create a hash of this particular policy, this policy script, right, or this policy definition. But you could also create a hash of the overall Plutus policy, right? The one you showed earlier, where it's just the CBOR, it's the description and whatever yeah. So you can also create a hash of this, regardless of the size. So maybe we have some second level, we hash the script or the Plutus script, both are JSON, so we should be able to just create hashes from those and then leverage those as the identifiers, and not necessarily individual pieces from the policies.
Yeah, good points. Yeah.
All right, I'll have to hop off, and I'm looking forward to joining this when I don't have 1,500 things going on next time around.
But really appreciate your feedback.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thanks for joining, Niels.
Yes, thanks
Yeah.
for coming. This happens every 2 weeks, same time. You'll be on the invite list.
Yeah,
See you next time.
next time around it's going to be between it's going to be after Rare Bloom, so that's going to be good. I'll be recovered by then. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Thanks for
Good
coming,
luck.
Niels. Peace.
Yeah. Actually, the point about doing some kind of hashes of the policy script itself has also been one of the things that I thought about. And one thing that, if I remember correctly, if you do a hash of this, this is the policy ID, if I don't remember wrong. So in fact, what we are doing is a hash of the policy ID, I think. But yeah.
Layers of hashes on top.
Layers, yes. So yes, I think, but yeah, take that with a, yeah, don't take it too seriously. But I think it's some kind of link there. But that is an interesting approach to also include some kind of hash and signature of the policy itself in some way. So I think that can actually be a option that we should look further into, because that should be reusable in both cases. So actually, I think it's a good idea to look into that.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that. We I think it would be cool to have someone well,
Yeah,
all the upgrades to the chain from Vasil, it seems like that hasn't come up in the discussion before as like options to change how this standard could work. And this is above my pay grade / experience, but that would be an interesting to hear personally. But yeah, Go ahead, Rars.
Yeah, I was saying that. So actually, this isn't what I started to say, but in 2 weeks we'll have Sebastian from the CF joining us, so maybe he'll give us some more insight. And we also reached out just now during the meeting because there wasn't a lot of input going back and forth, a lot of brainstorming because there's apparently too few devs in the room. But we reached out to the smart contract developer from Project Newman, Drip Drops, and unfortunately he's in a meeting until the top of the hour, but maybe he can join us in 2 weeks time. So
Sweet.
and because it seemed like we needed a more
Yeah.
smart
Need-
contract developers in the room to crack this nut.
Right.
So,
Need some more brains for the divergent thinking to converge into some actual ideas.
Yeah.
Wait, we can I was thinking we could wrap this up since it's only guild members at this point, and there's not as much of a community discussion able to happen when we're the only ones here. What do you think?
yeah, that would probably make sense.
Yeah.
At least for the recording.
Yeah. All right.
Great.
Sent, what do you say?
Yeah, well,
Do you have
I agree. So
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Love you. See you next time. Join us. Bye.